appreciate you all coming to hear me talk, but really it's about you, it's about us, it's about the community. So, first, by a show of hands, for how many of you is this your first escape event?
Where do all the old people go?
Yeah, I don't know. We ship them out the back actually. Cool. Wow, this is great. So just to explain a little bit about how these work. So we have these every Monday night at Adams Street Club. We have some sort of speaker. Now, I'm affiliated with Escape the City, but a lot of times we have, actually most of the time we have people on. We have adventurers, entrepreneurs, storytellers, usually all of the above. And so we have them talk up here, and they'll tell a story, they'll inspire, or they'll instruct. But really, at the core of it, the reason why we have these is to bring you and I together. It's to bring together a group of like-minded people who all share similar ambitions, and that's to find more meaning in our work, in our career, in our life, and to bring us all together and to create this place that's outside of our day-to-day routine. It's outside of our job, it's outside of our family, our friend circle usually, and to get into this more richer headspace and to allow us to kind of think outside of how we usually think. So that's kind of how these events go, and how tonight will work specifically. So, Plum gave an introduction to my story, and so through my story, I'll tell kind of my journey from IBM consultant, my sabbatical, and then into traveler, writer, entrepreneur, and now working with Escape the City. So I'll step you through that story. And then I'll dive into a little bit more with my sabbatical and how I negotiated that 7 months. So maybe if some of you are in a similar situation and considering that, then that will be helpful. And then we'll open up for some Q&A, and we can just talk, you can ask me anything, and we can just chat. So my hope for tonight is that I can offer a tangible example to you all. Someone who's escaped. I'm not a life coach. I'm not a huge motivational speaker. I'm someone who, as a year and a half ago, I was working for IBM as a consultant. I was dreaming of escaping. Wasn't sure what I wanted to do or how I was going to do it, but I did. And I'm also going to say that while I've learned a lot, I'm still kind of figuring this all out. So what I hope to offer today is a snapshot, maybe, of where you could be a year and a half, 2 years from now, if you're dreaming of escaping. And maybe you can latch on to pieces of my story, parts of it, probably not all of it, but pieces of it to give you a little inspiration and boost on your own journey. But I'm not necessarily an expert, but hopefully some of the things that I tell you can take them to your own journey. So that's my hope for tonight. But first, what I would like to do is I would like to get this room flowing a little bit more. So I'm going to ask us all to imagine something. Okay? So, and I have a magic wand in my hand, so it's easier to imagine it for some reason. I have this magic wand. So when I wave this magic wand, I want you all to imagine what you would do if you didn't have to go into work tomorrow. So you don't have to work tomorrow. Actually, you don't have to go into work for the next year. And I want you to imagine what you would do tomorrow. What you would do for the rest of the year if you didn't have to go into work. Okay? And keep in mind, money is no object. So don't say, well, I can't do that because then I'm like, it doesn't matter. In this world with the magic wand, we can do whatever we want. So just take a minute and just think about imagine what you do. Does everyone have something? So now what I want us to do is I want you to turn to your neighbor, introduce yourself to them, and tell them what you're going to do. But you have to say it, not like, oh, I would. You have to say, I'm going to. Whatever. Bike across the grass, read all day, go to lunch with my kids, whatever it is. And so, just meet each other. Meet your neighbor, tell, hi, my name is whatever, and this is what you do. So I hate stopping this because it's so cool to see how people interact and like, a bunch of strangers now we're actually kind of friends, right? So there's 3 reasons why I wanted to do that. The first, so as I was traveling, and I travel one of the things I love to do, I wanted to try to introduce one of the magical things about travel. And that's kind of those serendipitous encounters, those chance interactions that you have. And most of the time they're in the form of people. And so you never know who you're sitting next to until you actually turn around and start talking to them. The second reason that I wanted to do that, is that I wanted us to remember that we're really all on the same team. We all want similar things. It might not look the same, but it feels the same. So we all have dreams. We all want to have a sense of belonging. We all want to feel loved. We all want to live a life that we can be proud of. And then the third reason why I wanted to do that is to show the power of sharing your excitement, sharing the things that make you tick. Because there's something about once you tell another human being something, it somehow takes this larger form. And when you speak it, somehow you begin to feel it and maybe even believe it. And so I wanted to experiment and try to get the room flowing in that way. So, back in 2012, the thing that I would do if I didn't have to work tomorrow or for the rest of the year was slow travel. I just had this concept, I'm not sure where it came from, but I just had this urge to just explore. I didn't really care where, I just wanted to go somewhere. And I'd done traveling as a consultant, I get, in the US maybe it's less than here, but we get like 2 weeks vacation. And, I'd go to Peru, and that was fun, go to Machu Picchu, and I'd go to Greece, and it was cool. I mean, just the fact that I would have the opportunity to do that was great. But imagine some of you feel the same way. It's just like it just doesn't. It's like there's something short there, and you don't really get to experience travel the way you really want to. So I had this dream. I really just wanted to explore. I wanted to wander. I wanted to have this long-term, no plan. I just wanted to go somewhere and just explore, kind of see what would happen. And it's not that my job at IBM was terrible per se. It was a job, right? It was something, pay the bills. It was good. But there was a huge disconnect between how work felt and how I thought work had the potential to feel. And maybe it's kind of a romantic notion, but I had this ideal that work, the thing that we spend the most time on in our lives probably, is actually one of our greatest gifts we have to give while we're here. Our concept of pouring ourselves into something, for something, towards something. I have this notion that should be, something we care about. It shouldn't work be something we deem worthwhile the time we're spending in things. So I had this notion, and on one of my flights home, I was a traveling consultant. I was living in Chicago. I had a project in New York, and on one of my flights home, tired, exhausted, in the air, I came across this quote by, he's a poet, Cahill Gibran, and he says, "Work is love made visible, and if you cannot work with love, but only with distaste, it is better that you should leave your work and sit at the gate of the temple and take alms of those who work with joy." And after I read that, I was ready to quit. I'm like, I should leave my work. My sense of work, it had developed into this distaste, and it wasn't really a good look on me. I was doing fine at work, but it had been this distaste. And I was like, wow, I should leave it. I take alms at the garbage man who's like loving his life. And so I had this, and then I had this dream of long-term travel. And so I wanted to quit. I wasn't sure how. I had this like big dream I wanted to do, but I still didn't know. I knew what I thought work should feel like, but I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. And so I'm like, I have no idea what to do. So I had this thing I was really excited about, and then work that I was very distasteful about, and I didn't know what to do. So I basically hit a breaking point. And I was like, enough is enough. I realized I was putting off this dream for too long in the unforeseen future. I'm not sure when it would ever happen. there's a window of opportunity in my life where I'm fairly unattached. I didn't have a mortgage, didn't have any children. So I'm like, okay, there may never be a perfect time to do something like this, but now is probably the most perfect time that I've loved. So I did what any sensible person would do, and I booked a one-way ticket to Iceland. And departing 5 months into the future. So basically, I gave myself 5 months to figure out what I would do about my job, my apartment in Chicago, the money, my parents, my friends. I basically made this decision, and I committed to this decision. And I did it in the form of this one-way ticket to Iceland. So the moment I booked that one-way ticket, I learned 2 really valuable lessons about escaping the city. The first is that the single best way to escape the city, or to escape anything, is to have something you're burning to escape into. Without that, if you can't see it, if you can't taste it, if you don't know what you're going into, I'm going to say you're probably going to have a hard time escaping, because there's nothing that's really pulling you that strongly, enough to get over your fears, your hesitations. So I learned that. And then the second thing that I learned was that first step, that big leap, that purchasing, that commitment, that purchasing of a ticket was the hardest step, but it was also the most important. And there's 4 reasons why that is. So when you make that first step, when you commit, you really commit, 4 things happen, and they're kind of magical, and I'm not sure why they happen or how. But the first is you're reminded of the resilience of the human spirit. And I'm going to read a few quotes because I love quotes, and so I'm going to read quotes for each of these 4 points. So first, you're reminded of the resilience of the human spirit. So Henry Ford said, "One of the greatest discoveries a man makes, one of his greatest surprises, is that he can find he can do what he was afraid he couldn't." 2, you reinvigorate your self-confidence by committing to this thing that you really want to do. Robert Hughes says, "A determined soul will do more with a rusty monkey wrench than a loafer will accomplish with all the tools in a machine shop." Number 3, you'll attract like-minded people who will help pull you up. A great mission will attract like-minded individuals who want to go on the same journey. And 4th, your next steps will become clear. And I like to talk about this as the headlight in the dark principle. So that first step was tough, looking at that trip, but I committed. And I like to imagine it like driving in the dark with the headlights on. Okay, you can't see from point A to B. You know where you're going, but you can't see the whole journey. But you can see several feet in front of you. And as you keep going, you can see several more feet. As you keep going, you can see several more feet. So that's one of the things that happens when you take that first step. Your next steps then are revealed to you, kind of like you're shining headlights on. And so, since I think that first step, that first time you commit and you actually make that decision to do something, is the most important. What I want to try to help today is to get everyone to take that first step. Now, it may not be today, it may not be tomorrow, it may be a year from now, maybe 2 years from now, but that first step is the most important. So I want to help provide the framework that I use to take that first step. Now, when I told my story, I booked a one-way ticket. It sounded very sporadic. Oh yeah, I'm going to quit my job, I'm going to go to Iceland. But the truth of the matter is, there's actually a couple of years, more than a couple of years, where I was doing certain things that eventually led to that step. And so what I want to provide today is a 10-step framework that I used to get to that first step. And so I'm going to write these down too, just so we can visualize them. So the first step in this 10-step framework, number 1, is to think about your potential regrets. So you may be familiar, in 2012 there's an article in The Guardian where there was a hospice nurse, I believe, and she would interview her dying patients. And she came up with this not necessarily a study, but this interview, and then she summed up all the answers. Where she would ask her patients what their regrets are. So the name of the article was The Top Regrets of the Dying. And so the number one regret was, I wish I had lived a life that I wanted to live, and not the life that everyone else wanted me to live. So oftentimes when we talk about escaping or doing something different, people often get hung up on like the next 1, 2 years, 3 years. What's going to happen in my career? What about will I lose momentum in my career, or what will I do for money in the next 1 or 2 years? And I think when you look at your potential regrets when you're 80 years old, when you're 90 or older, what are the things that you would regret? And all of a sudden, those short-term things become a lot less important than the long-term stuff. And so what I would say is that instead of the next 1, 2, 3 years, I'm less concerned about that. What I'm more concerned about is what happens if you don't do this thing that's burning in your heart in the next 10, 20, 50 years. The sooner you act, then the sooner you can get on that right path, instead of going down and then realizing that maybe you shouldn't have done it. So the first thing I learned was think about potential regrets. Actually, I'm going to pass these out to someone who wants to hold this one. Alright, the second thing I learned is to follow your excitement. Okay, so as I said before, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I knew one thing, and that the concept of long-term slow traveling excited me. Now, I didn't know where that would end if I went down this path, but it was a whole lot easier to define what would excite me, what would I do if I didn't have to go to work tomorrow, than it would if I was trying to pinpoint my passion. Because a lot of times it's like, hey, what's your passion? Find your passion. We expect this like lightning bolt moment. It's like, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. Like, I don't really think it works like that. So instead, what I like to say is follow your excitement. And the reason I say that is because you don't have to figure out the be-all, end-all. Your passion, what you're meant to do on this earth. Instead, go towards what excites you. And my belief is that by going toward what excites you, you then follow the next thing that excites you. And you go on this path. And I think the thing that excites you is the direction you're meant to be. You may zigzag. And oftentimes, if you look at the people we admire, the entrepreneurs, the thought leaders, when you look back, there kind of was a zigzag path. It wasn't this clear trajectory. And I think they always followed the thing that excited them most. And so when I started traveling, that excited me. And then I came back. I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. I negotiated a sabbatical, and I'll talk a little bit more about this later, but I ended up coming back and I quit 2 weeks later, which you probably can imagine that was inevitable. But I didn't really know what to do. So I was kind of in that same spot. So the thing that excited me is my friend who came to Iceland with me was a writer. He had a published book in 2010. And so we were talking about the whole publishing industry changing. And I'm like, you're a great writer, you're terrible at the business stuff. I'm better at the business stuff, and just quit my job. So this pet project to try to learn how to publish a book, excited me. So I went down this path. And next thing you know, I have this book. We have this book out, and it's selling. And now we're doing this whole series. And then working with Escape the City, the opportunity came to work with them, and that excites me. And so now I'm down this path of excitement. And I'm not exactly sure how it's going to end up, but every step of the way, I feel like I've risen a little bit more. And I'm getting closer to that passion, if you want to call it that. So number 2, what was number 2?
What are your excitement?
Yeah.
Sorry.
So follow your excitement. Okay, who wants this one? Do we have to pick it?
I like it.
Alright, good. Alright, so
Point is how to get it.
so the third thing is writing it down. Okay, there's some sort of magical thing when you write it down. I also say when you share it with someone, there's something there too. Is anyone familiar with Lou Holtz? It's an American football thing. I don't know if anyone knows. So Lou Holtz, basically Notre Dame is like an American football college powerhouse. And the coach, Lou Holtz, ended up taking them to the several championships. And he's really well respected. Years ago, before that all happened, I think he recently was fired as an assistant coach. Wasn't really sure what was happening with his life. You look at the guy, and I'm just saying this because it's funny, but he does not look like a coach that would win a national championship. He's probably like this tall. I think he has a lisp. He has like giant, like thick glasses, and he like just looks like a I don't know. So to imagine that like this manly sport of American football, this guy could take a championship. So basically, when he was like a no, when he was fired from assistant coach, just trying to figure out his path, he read this book called The Magic of Thinking Big. And what he did is he wrote down, maybe it was 100 things, maybe it was more than 100 things. He basically wrote down 100 things that he wanted to accomplish in his life. And so call it, it's like a modern day bucket list or something. But he wrote them down. And sure enough, slowly he's checking these things off. One of them that he wrote down was to win a national championship. And there's some power in that. And it's not just writing it down, and that's why when I say, talk about what you're going to do. There's a difference between writing it down like, one day I'm going to do this thing. Instead of writing it down like a to-dream, write it down like a to-do. Like put it like next, like go to the gym, win a national championship. Like make it something that it's a to-do. When doing this long-term travel and book a trip to Iceland became a to-do, all of a sudden it's like, all right, check, done. But the third thing I learned is that there's really great power in writing it down. Okay, what's this one? I'm not sure what I'm going to do with these afterwards. Okay, the fourth thing in this framework is to find your heroes. Okay, so over the 2 years leading up to this thing, I started following travelers, bloggers, entrepreneurs. Escape the City, that was one of the people I was following. They were my heroes, and I started following them. And I follow them on Twitter. I follow them. I read their books. I read their blogs. And the reason you have to find your heroes is you have to find, basically your heroes are your dream made visible. So you can like see, and it might not be exactly everything about them, so you can have several heroes. This guy's my hero in book writing. This guy's my hero in being an entrepreneur. This guy's my hero as a mindful traveler. And so by finding those heroes and reading, follow them on Twitter if they're still alive, read their biographies if they're not. Find your heroes. Find your heroes. And there's something about that, and really, you don't necessarily have to imitate them, but kind of emulate the way in which they achieve the things that you admire in them. So, find your heroes. Okay, the fifth thing that I learned is how important it is to surround yourself with like-minded peers and like-minded ideas. If you're forever surrounded by people who have no ambition to escape the city, or who one day wanted to escape but have given up, you're going to forever feel crazy in your ambitions. So that's the power of a group like this. Now, I'm not sure if everyone necessarily wants to leave their job, or maybe they just want to do something different. But we're all kind of yearning for something a little more, whatever that may be. So surrounding yourself by people like this is super important. And there's a quote somewhere that you're the average of the 5 people you hang around most. And so if you look at who are the 5 people you hang around most, are they people who at work who are miserable, or are they people who are inspire you and you try to help each other? So attend more events like this. There's another group. I think I'm not sure if it's in the UK. It is in the US. It's called Meet Plan Go, and it's basically an organization for career breaks. So I started going to these Meet Plan Go groups, where these are people who all wanted to take career breaks. watch TED Talks. Surround yourself, if you're having a hard time finding people, to start to surround yourself with those like-minded ideas. You can watch people speak, or you can even form your own group. I know a few guys. So you started forming a group of friends where you guys would like read books together and stuff. Are you doing that, Mark? No. Clarence. You started to do it, right?
Yeah, a little bit. It's also still very early stages.
But yeah, it doesn't matter what it is, if it's early stages or not. So when I was in Chicago, a group of friends and I started what we called the Chicago Business Book Club, which basically we would read books, like Rework or 4-Hour Work Week or Do Something That Matters by Blake Mycoskie, Steve Jobs biography. Basically, we just read books together. And we'd get together, and it was this not very manly thing where we would talk about the books, but the conversation would always go toward what we wanted in life and our dreams and how shit work was, but we really wanted to do these things. And so that was kind of our way. We didn't have to skip the city like this in Chicago. We didn't have the opportunity to get together like this. And so we kind of formed our own group. And that was a huge catalyst to each of us doing our own thing. One guy ended up leaving his job and hiking the Appalachian Trail for like 7 months. I eventually ended up taking my sabbatical and doing my thing. One guy left his job and now he's opening a bar back in the States. And it was really a powerful concept. So surround yourself. That's number 5. Surround yourself with like-minded peers. Okay, the 6th thing I learned, and we touched on this a little earlier, is the importance of sharing your dreams. So dreams are very personal things, right? It's kind of scary to tell someone, I want to travel for 7 months, I want to bike, I want to do whatever. Actually, this would be a good time. Can some of you share what some of your neighbors told you that they wanted to do? Do you remember? Any volunteers? Yeah.
Yeah, we can change it. Only very chance.
Wow.
Anybody else get the same answer?
Travel.
Huh?
Travel.
Travel. Anyone else?
Road trip across America.
What's that?
Road trip across America.
Road trip across America. Anyone else?
Photography.
Photography?
Touring.
Travel to Australia and find a job there.
Yeah. It's a lot of travel. There's just something powerful in sharing it, and I talked about it earlier. But once you kind of put it out there, and related to that is dare to be vulnerable. So whether it's sharing your dreams or actually sharing the thing, sharing your drawing, sharing your photography, once you put it out there, it takes a lot of courage, but you have to do it. And personally, my example, so I started writing when I was traveling. And I wasn't really sure, what would happen. I'm an engineer, I'm not a writer. I developed into a writer, but back then I wasn't even sure if I could write. I mean, I knew it. I wasn't sure if it would be like coherent sentences. And I wasn't sure if anyone would care what I was writing. But I'll say starting that blog and writing and communicating was probably the single most important thing that I did. And on that blog, I would share the experiences, but I would share kind of my philosophy on life. I would share what I was experiencing, and I would share like the crazy things I wanted to do. And it's really crazy when you share it. Until you share something, people don't have the opportunity to help you. So when you share something with someone, they may say, oh, actually, I know someone who does this, or whatever. It's like, oh, actually, I want to do that same thing too. And so when you put it out there, then you allow people to help you. And there's something about, we want to help people who have these like burning dreams. When people share something with us, we feel this excitement. We want to help them. And so be one of those people who has this burning desire, who throws their dreams out there and what excites them, and they get surprised by what comes back. So, number 6, share your dreams. Okay, so the 7th thing that I learned is it's very important to maintain an experimental mindset. Okay? So through all of this, the traveling stuff, the writing stuff, the publishing stuff, if I said, I'm going to be this really great writer, or I'm going to be this top publisher, I'm going to be the best traveler in the world, those are really tough things to say. But instead when I say, hey, I'm going to try publishing, I'm going to experiment with it, it might not work, it might work, but I'm going to try this thing. I think I really like to travel long term, I'm going to try it out. Or, I think I want to help build the escape school, I'm really excited by it, I'm going to try it out. Now, embracing an experimental mindset, it doesn't mean you do shit half-assed. It means you still care about what you're doing. But you can stand up and say, hey, I'm trying this thing, but it might not work. And so there's a power in then embracing that experimental mindset. So is that number 7? 7. So number 7 is embrace an experimental mindset. I was going to call you that next. All right. 8th thing I learned. So 8th thing, okay, this is an important one. So 8th thing I learned is to be, and it's kind of weird, but to be grateful for your discontent. So by realizing that we're a little lost, that lets us then step and start to find our path. We also have to remember that maybe some of us would do exactly what we're doing tomorrow, but maybe a lot of us wouldn't. And so, by having this great discontent, we're knocking at the ceiling of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We're reaching self-realization, which is a super great problem to have, right? We're pretty privileged that we're capable of this. So, related to that is to have this attitude of gratitude. And so, anytime where because as you go through this different stuff, you hit highs and lows, right? So in the lows, when you remember to be grateful for those things, gratitude is kind of like a little energy boost. All of a sudden, when you start to think of everything you're grateful for, you get a little more swagger in your step. You're like, actually, you know what? There's maybe I'm unhappy in this area, but there's actually a whole lot that could be worse. And so remind yourself that you're really grateful for this discontent and this problem that we have. It's a very privileged problem to have. So number 8 is be thankful. All right. So the 9th thing that I learned, this is going to sound a little fluffy and cheesy, but how important it is to love yourself. So, and there's a difference between being completely selfish and just like loving the hell out of yourself. And so listening to your dreams and listening to the things that excite you, I think is a form of loving yourself. I think far too often we're more inclined to help other people reach their dreams than we are to listen to our own. Case in point, if we're working for a large company, essentially we're looking for someone else's dream. So I really do think it's important to love yourself. You can call it different things. But I think by listening to those things that excite you, that's pretty important. So listen, love yourself. Who wants to love yourself? Okay, and then the 10th and final thing in this framework is repeat. So when I came back from my trip, I felt 7 months. I traveled around. I went to Iceland. I ended up going to the Baltics. I went down to through Eastern Europe, and I was living and traveling all these different places. And I come home, and I'm like, gosh, I'm lost again. I'm not sure what I'm going to do. And at that point, I realized that every journey. So my physical journey is, it's a metaphorical journey as well. But every journey, the end is actually the beginning to another journey. Right? So by going through all this, I realized, okay, I had learned a lot, but all these things all of a sudden kept popping up. Because if it wasn't discontent in work, it was what am I doing next? And there's always going to be something. And so reminding myself to go through all these things, and realizing what was out of balance, what was something I was neglecting in these last steps. And so repeat is the one that I So those are the 10 things that I use. Maybe not all of them will work for you, but I think they're pretty universal. And the goal with all those things is to make that first step. Like I said, I've been doing this stuff, following my heroes, surrounding myself with good people, watching TED Talks, reading books, doing all this stuff so that I could take that first step. So it actually was risky, but not quite as risky as just impulsively leave my job. And so, like I said, I booked this one-way ticket to Iceland. I had 5 months. So along the way, I was prepared to quit. I started saving up money. I started cutting down all my expenses. I started selling stuff. I started to prepare for living this nomadic life for like 7 months or so, or however long I wanted to. And I was going to quit. And then one day, a foreign thought entered my head. It was like, why don't I just ask off time for work? Can I do that? I looked at all the IBM policies. IBM's a humongous company, and I was looking at sabbaticals, leave of absences, what are the policies, and all this stuff. And there's a lot of verbiage there, but there wasn't really like a set protocol. So I had a conversation with my manager, and I just brought it up. And long story short, I ended up getting a 7-month sabbatical to travel, to explore these little pet projects I thought I wanted to do at a little less of a risk. Granted, I ended up quitting. But it gave me confidence to explore those things, and then confidence to quit, because I knew that the door was open with my employer. But I could leave, or maybe they wouldn't take me back after all. So it was a really powerful thing. And actually, when I was here in July, and I gave a talk about kind of sort of similar to this, but talked more about the sabbatical. And Alex is here. I asked him to come back because he came to the talk, and I kind of brought up this concept of a sabbatical, and he was like, "Holy shit! Like, I didn't even really think about that." And so I've kind of, within IBM and with other people who have jobs, I've kind of become, I get emails a lot that people are like, "Oh, how did you escape? How did you take your sabbatical? How did you do it?" And Alex is one of them who, you got a sabbatical, you ended up going back to work, and you don't sound too excited, but plenty of other people have done it. I don't know if we need to go, we'll do a Q&A, so if you guys want to learn more about that, we can certainly explore that. But I want to say it's a way to explore temporary escape. Okay, it's to get that confidence that you need and to explore some other things while still keeping the door open with your employer. So, I basically, I'm going to do a point thing again, but it's not going to be quite as long as that one. So there's basically 4 things that I learned that helped me get that sabbatical. The first was I did great work, so I knew I was already an asset to my employer. Now your situation may be different depending on. I was a consultant, so I was on projects. So one project was ending. I hadn't been staffed on a new one, so I saw a perfect window of opportunity to ask for a sabbatical. But I had already known that I had done great work, so I could stand by my word. If they said no, then okay, well, I'm going to do this anyway. But I knew I could stand by my word and what I had done out here. 2, and this goes back to the one-way ticket to Iceland. To do a sabbatical, I really think it's important to commit to it. So I was, basically I had nothing to lose because I was going to quit anyway. So I just decided to ask. I booked the ticket, I'm going on this trip. And you have a lot more confidence when you have nothing to lose. And so when you say, hey, I'd really like to explore this thing I've always dreamed about doing, I'm not on a project now, I'm rolling off this one pretty soon, it just gives you a little more confidence. The third thing I learned about the sabbatical is that when you talk to your manager, it's not about you, it's about your business, it's about the company, it's about your manager, right? So while your dreams to do something are very personal, when asking for a sabbatical, you have to think about the business's needs. So I tried to frame it that, projects were a little low, we didn't have as much projects coming in. I'll volunteer to take myself off cost while exploring something I really want to do. So that's the third thing, is to learn it's really not about you as far as the sabbatical, it's about positioning it for a business case. And then the fourth thing, and this is probably the most surprising thing, and I think Alex had the same experience, is that by appealing to emotions, by saying and by sharing your dreams. So I said, after I made the professional business case for my thing, and I said, and this will allow me to do something I've been really dreaming about doing. And the surprising thing about that is that my manager came back, and he was like, Matt, you know what? He's like, that's something I always wanted to do. And so he had this certain confidence, and it gave him satisfaction to know that he was helping enable my by doing something that he regretted that he didn't do. And I think, Alex, you said you had a similar situation, right? Where your manager was...
I think he was jealous.
He was jealous, yeah. So I think appealing to emotions is really powerful because support will come in most other places. So that pretty much sums up what I wanted to share. I hope my story is relatable to you all. I hope that maybe it gives you the confidence you need to make that first step, or at least start planning and going through some of the stuff I talked about in my framework to get prepared for that first step. Because I really believe that, I still believe this ideal that work is one of the greatest